My name is Walter Harris, though most people in this neighborhood call me sir only when they want me out of their way. 68 years old. Once a respected high school history teacher. The kind who knew every face, every fear, every hidden talent. Kids used to bring me apple pies on Thanksgiving. Parents shook my hand with both of theirs. Now, the mailman nods at me only when he mistakes me for the neighbor with the nicer lawn. I sit at my kitchen table every morning, an old oak table meant for 6 people. I bought it the year Linda and I moved into this house, back when the kids were small and the world felt like it rotated around our laughter. Every Sunday, the seats were filled. Josh throwing mashed potatoes. Emily drawing smiley faces in spilled juice. Now there's only a cup of lukewarm tea. My hands wrapped around it like it's the last warm thing in my life. The phone hasn't rung in 4 months. Well, it rang. Once. But it wasn't my kids. It was the bank, asking if I still wanted to keep the credit card I barely use. I talked longer than I should have. The woman on the phone cleared her throat twice, probably trying to escape the conversation. Even she had somewhere to be. People think loneliness is silence. It isn't. It's when you speak, and no one bothers to answer. Last Christmas, my daughter Emily sent me a picture of her kids opening presents. No message. No Merry Christmas, Dad. No call. Just the photo, as if that counted as connection. I stared at it for hours. Zoomed in on every face. None of them looked toward the camera. None of them looked like they remembered I existed. Sometimes I whisper her name into the empty house. Emily. And the house swallows the sound like it owes me nothing. Tonight, the loneliness felt heavier than usual. It pressed against my ribs, settling deep under my breastbone. I stood in front of the dining table and touched each chair. 1 for Linda. 1 for Josh. 1 for Emily. 1 for little Henry, who's probably 12 now. 1 for Lily, the baby I've only held once. And 1 for me, the last one standing. I sat down and allowed myself to say the words I rarely admit, even in thought. I mattered once. The doorbell rang. Not loudly, just a single, soft chime. A hesitant one. The kind that feels like a question. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe. But no. My children never knocked. They always used to burst in with noise and light and life. This knock was gentle, cautious, almost respectful. I opened the door and saw a young man, maybe 30. He had a nervous smile, a backpack slung over one shoulder, and eyes that looked like they carried their own shadows. Mr. Harris? He asked. My name. He knew my name. Yes, I said, my voice cracking slightly. Do I know you? He swallowed. You taught me. 10th grade history. I blinked. I wanted to say his name, but memory is a cruel companion these days. He must have seen the struggle on my face. I'm Daniel Cole, he added softly. You once told me I wasn't invisible. Invisible. God, the irony. He shifted uneasily, as if debating whether to continue. I need your help, sir. And I think you might need mine too. And in that moment, in that quiet doorway, something inside me stirred for the first time in years. Not hope exactly, but the faint memory of it. Daniel stood on my porch like a boy who had suddenly remembered his own childhood. His hands fidgeted with the strap of his backpack, and his eyes, those dark, restless eyes, shifted between the floorboards and my face. I stepped aside and motioned him in. Come on, I said. It's cold, and I don't like talking to ghosts on my doorstep. He gave a shaky smile and entered. The house creaked under his weight, as if surprised to host another living soul. For a moment, I watched him look around, tracing the walls, the family photos, the empty hooks where coats used to hang. He paused at the dining table. That seat was always yours, he murmured, pointing to the head of the table. I remember you told us the head of the table was for the one who keeps the peace. I chuckled softly. A foolish thing I said when I still believed kids listened. They did, he said quietly. At least one did. We sat across from each other, 2 men separated by 30 years and a mountain of different regrets. I poured him tea. My hands trembled slightly, but not from age, anticipation, maybe, or nerves. When you live alone long enough, any company feels like a test you might fail. So, I started, why come now? He inhaled sharply. I've been struggling, Mr. Harris. Life's been. He searched for the right word. Loud. I tilted my head. Loud. Too loud to think. Too loud to be myself. And one day I remembered your voice. Your class. You used to stay after school and let me just talk. You never rushed me. I tried to do that for all my students. No, he said firmly. You did it for me. You saw something in me when no one else did. Something warm flickered in my chest, old pride, long buried. I hadn't felt it in years. Not since before Linda passed. Not since the kids began drifting away like boats losing sight of shore. Daniel leaned forward. And I remembered something you once said. You told me, when life pushes you out of the room, walk back in with your own chair. I laughed in surprise. I said that. Yes, he smiled. And today, I need a chair. I need someone who remembers who I used to be. His voice cracked. Just slightly. Just enough to reveal the truth beneath. The man was drowning. And you came to me, I whispered. He nodded. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The room felt smaller, heavier. I thought of Emily, who didn't bother calling. Of Josh, who sent generic birthday messages that looked copied from a corporate email. Of the cold silence that filled my home every night. Yet here was someone, not my blood, not my family, who remembered me when the people I raised had forgotten. Daniel, I began slowly, you're not invisible. Not now. Not here. His shoulders dropped in relief, as if I had lifted something from him. But the truth was, he had lifted something from me too. I saw, for the first time in years, that I still had a place in the world. A reason to set the table for more than a cup of tea. We talked for hours. About his job. His loneliness. His fear of becoming someone people step around. I didn't give him advice. Teachers talk too much as it is. I just listened. And somewhere between the stories and the silences, he said something that split me open. You're the first person to look at me today, and actually see me. I swallowed hard. Funny, I said, forcing a smile. You're the first person to knock on my door this year. He exhaled softly. I'm glad it was me. When he finally stood to leave, he hesitated in the doorway. Mr. Harris, do you think I could come by again? Maybe tomorrow? I felt something shift inside me. A small, steady awakening. Yes, Daniel, I said. Come tomorrow. My table's not as full as it used to be. He grinned, not wide, not childlike, but tired and grateful, and walked into the fading evening light. As the door clicked shut, I stood there in the quiet. But it wasn't the old quiet, the dead kind that suffocates. No. This silence held promise. For the first time in years. I wasn't alone. Daniel came the next day. And the next. And the one after that. At first, I thought he was simply desperate. Lonely enough to cling to the memory of a teacher who once offered him a safe corner to breathe. But as days passed, I realized something strange. I needed him, too. He'd walk in, always with that soft knock, gentle, hesitant, like asking permission to exist. Afternoon, Mr. Harris. You're early today, I'd say. I didn't want to wait. His presence changed the rhythm of the house. The floors no longer echoed with the emptiness of a life paused. The air felt warmer. The evening shorter. Even the old clock over the fireplace ticked with a steadier heart. We talked about everything. Books, regrets, the price of groceries, the strange feeling of being alive but unnoticed. Do you ever feel like people look through you? Daniel asked once. Every time I buy milk, I answered. The cashier barely sees me, just the wrinkles and the coupons. He laughed. It was a cracked sound, but it was real. His real laugh. One afternoon he asked, Did your kids visit often? When you retired? I hesitated. My tongue pressed against the truth, testing how much it stung. They used to, I said. Until they didn't. Did something happen? Yes, I whispered. Life. He didn't push. God bless him for that. A week later, the doorbell rang again, but this time it wasn't Daniel's careful knock. It was loud. Impatient. Sharp. The kind of knock that announces itself like a warning. I opened the door to find my son, Josh, standing there in a suit too expensive for the personality wearing it. His tie wasn't crooked. His posture wasn't relaxed. Everything about him screamed, "I have more important places to be." "Dad," he said curtly. "Josh, you remember where I live?" He sighed. "Don't start." He walked inside without waiting for an invitation, just like he used to as a child. Except now, there was nothing warm about it. His eyes scanned the room the way a realtor inspects a house they have no intention of buying. "We need to talk," he declared. Daniel, who had been sitting at the dining table reading, stood up immediately. I can leave," he offered. "No need," I said quickly. "You're not intruding." Josh turned to him with a raised brow. "Who's this?" "A friend," I replied. "A friend," Josh repeated, as if I'd said something absurd. I saw judgment flash across his face. It wasn't the first time. "Dad," he continued, "Emily and I have been talking. You're getting older. You're alone. And we think it's time you consider a facility." "A facility?" My voice dropped an octave. "You know, assisted living." "I'm not dying, Josh." "No one said you were," he said, slipping into that empty corporate tone. "But you can't take care of yourself forever." Daniel stepped forward slightly, as if ready to defend me. Josh noticed. "And why is he here?" "He came to see me," I said calmly. "Why?" I almost said, "Because he remembers me," but that would have cut too deep. Instead, I said, "Because he wanted to." Josh exhaled. "Dad, you can't just let strangers wander in. It isn't safe." I stared at my own son, the boy whose nightmares I calmed, whose scraped knees I bandaged, whose broken science projects I stayed up all night fixing. Now he looked at me like I was some fragile inconvenience, incapable of making my own decisions. "Daniel is not a stranger," I said coldly. "You barely know him." "And you barely visit," I replied. The silence that followed was sharp. Josh tightened his jaw. "We'll talk later," he snapped, grabbing his coat. "Think about the facility. It's for your own good." He stormed out. The door slammed hard enough to rattle a picture frame. Linda's picture. The only piece of her this house still holds. Daniel approached me slowly. "Mr. Harris, are you okay?" I stared at the door, letting the sting settle. "Yes," I said finally. "For the first time. I think I am." Because something had just awakened inside me. Something old. Something steady. Something my son had forgotten. I was not a fragile man. I was a father, a teacher, a leader once. And I was done being dismissed like a burden. After Josh left, the house trembled with the echo of his slam. Not physically. No, the walls were too old and solid for that. But something inside me trembled. Something that had stayed silent for years. Daniel placed a gentle hand on the back of the nearest chair, as if afraid to break the fragile moment. "You don't have to pretend you're okay," he said softly. "But I am," I replied. And the strangest thing was, I meant it. We sat down again, and for a long time neither of us spoke. The quiet between us wasn't awkward. It was understanding, a shared recognition of wounds shaped differently but felt the same. Finally, Daniel asked, "Have they talked to you like that before? Your kids?" A humorless chuckle escaped me. "Son, they don't talk to me at all." He frowned. "They really think they can just move you? Put you somewhere?" "In a facility," I said with a sigh. "Like a winter coat you store away when you don't need it." Daniel's jaw tightened. "That's not right." "I know." "You're not helpless." "I know that too." A silence settled again, and I looked at the old clock on the wall, the one Linda bought me for my 50th birthday. Its ticking sounded louder than usual, like it was reminding me of something I'd forgotten. Time doesn't just age a man. It dares him to speak. "Daniel," I said, clearing my throat, "do you know the worst part about getting old?" He shook his head. "You become a background character in your own story. People stop asking what you want. They assume. And you let them." "I did," I admitted quietly, "because I thought maybe they knew better." Daniel leaned forward. "They don't." I looked at him then, really looked. The shadows under his eyes, the exhaustion in the lines of his face, the tremble in his fingertips. "You've felt it too," I said. He nodded. Most of my life. The air thickened between us, not with pain but with an unexpected solidarity. Two men from different worlds, both dismissed in their own ways. I stood up. My knees protested, but I ignored them. Tomorrow, I announced, we are going to move this table. It's too big for one man. Daniel blinked. You want to get rid of it? No, I said, resting my hand on the old oak surface. I want to make room. I don't need a table for 6 anymore. I need one that fits the life I actually have. A real life. Today's life. He smiled faintly. Where do you want it? Against the window, I said. Facing the street. I want to see who's coming and who's going. He nodded. I'll help. Before he left that evening, he turned to me at the door. I'm proud of you, he said. I froze. That was a sentence I hadn't heard in over a decade. Not from my kids. Not from the world. Not even from myself. When the door closed behind him, the silence came again, but it was a different silence now. A fuller one. A living one. I walked to the table and set 2 cups out instead of 1. I don't know why. Maybe hope needs physical space. Later that night, my phone buzzed, an unfamiliar sensation after months of stillness. I squinted at the screen. Emily. The message was short. Josh told me about your situation. We should talk. Her situation. My life reduced to a line in a text message. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, though I was. Not because I was hurt, though I was that too. I didn't reply because for the first time in years, I realized something important. I didn't need their permission to exist. I didn't need their concern on their terms. I didn't need their validation, or their guilt-filled visits, or their hollow obligations. I needed myself. And I had found a piece of him today. The quiet revolt had begun, not with shouting, not with bitterness, but with a simple realization. I was done being someone's afterthought. Morning light spilled through the blinds in thin, trembling stripes. For the first time in months, I woke before the alarm. Something inside me buzzed, quiet, steady, intentional. A feeling I hadn't tasted in years. Today, Daniel was coming to help move the table. But that wasn't why I felt different. No. This was something else. Something like ownership of my own life. I brewed coffee instead of tea. Linda used to say coffee was a forward-looking drink, meant for people who expected something from the day. Tea was for memory, for sitting still. I had been sitting still for far too long. At exactly 9:03, Daniel knocked. 3 soft taps. He always knocked like he was announcing himself to a sleeping world. Morning, Mr. Harris. Walter, I corrected. He blinked. Really? Really? You've earned it. His grin warmed the room more than the sunlight. We worked in comfortable silence, shifting the oak table inch by inch toward the window. It groaned under its age, but so did I, so we understood each other. When it finally settled into place, its surface catching the golden glow from the street, I felt an unexpected swell of triumph. It looks like it belongs there, Daniel said. Maybe I belong here too, I muttered. Around noon, as Daniel tightened a loose chair leg, the doorbell rang. A familiar, impatient ring. I sighed. Josh. Daniel stood beside me. Not protectively, respectfully. I opened the door. There was my son again, shoulders squared like a man entering a courtroom instead of his father's home. Dad, he said briskly. We need to finish our conversation. No, I replied calmly. You need to finish assuming I have no voice. He blinked, thrown off balance. What? Come in, I said. But wipe your feet. I don't want you tracking mud through the house like you did when you were 8. Daniel coughed to hide a laugh. Josh stepped inside, stiff, irritated. His eyes fell on the move table. What happened in here? I rearranged my home, I answered. My life too, while I was at it. He frowned. Dad, you're being dramatic. No, I'm being present. He exhaled sharply. Look, Emily and I think. Yes, I interrupted. You think, and think, and think, but you don't ask. Ask what? What I want. He opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time in years, My son looked confused. Not annoyed. Not dismissive. Just unsure. Good. Dad, we are worried, he said finally. You're alone. You're isolated. This house is too big. And yet I'm not the one who feels like a stranger here, I replied quietly. His face tightened. Is this because of him? Josh nodded toward Daniel. Dad, you barely know. I know him better than I know the man standing in front of me. That landed. Clean and sharp. Josh swallowed. You're choosing him over your family. No, I said. I'm choosing myself. Something I haven't done since your mother died. Silence filled the room. Heavy, honest. Daniel stepped forward. Maybe I should. No, I said. Stay. If my son wants to know who I am now, he should see it. Josh's eyes flickered. Anger, confusion, maybe even hurt. I didn't hate him for it. He was human. Flawed. Just like me. But he needed to understand something. Josh, I said softer, I raised you to be strong. To be capable. To stand tall. But somewhere along the way, you started believing that if a man wrinkles, he breaks. I'm not broken. He looked down at his shoes. Then why didn't you say anything before? Because you never stopped long enough to listen. His shoulders slumped. He suddenly looked much younger, like the boy who once hid behind me during thunderstorms. Dad, I'm sorry. I nodded. Not a dramatic nod. Not a forgiving gesture. Just a simple acknowledgement. You don't have to be sorry, I said. You just have to see me. Josh glanced at Daniel, then back at me. And him. He's someone who did. The house was quiet for a long moment, the clock ticking steadily, Linda's clock marking the rhythm of a long overdue shift. Finally Josh whispered, Can I come back tomorrow? I looked at him. Really looked. Not as the man who forgot me, but as the son who once held my hand crossing the street. Yes, I said. But this time, knock. His eyes softened. Dad, I will. When he left, Daniel let out a low breath. That was something. It was overdue, I said. Painful things usually are. The next morning arrived with a strange calmness, as if the world itself sensed something inside me had shifted. I didn't rush. I didn't rehearse anything in my head. I simply lived my morning, brewed coffee, opened the curtains, let the house breathe. At 9:15, there was a knock. Not Daniel's gentle taps. Not Josh's impatient pounding. Something in between, uncertain, careful, almost hopeful. I opened the door. There stood Emily. My daughter. Older, sharper around the eyes, her hair tied back in a way that made her look perpetually hurried. She held her phone in one hand like a shield and a paper cup of iced coffee in the other. Dad, she said quietly. Emily. For a moment, her lips trembled, the smallest flicker of vulnerability. Then she exhaled and straightened her coat. I heard about yesterday. I'm sure you did, I replied. She stepped inside, scanning the house as if she expected decay or chaos or the slow collapse of a forgotten life. But the house was warm, clean, alive in small ways. Her gaze landed on the move table. You rearranged. I did. Why? Because I can. The corner of her mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but close. Dad, we were worried. No, I corrected gently. You were guilty. There's a difference. She stiffened. That's not fair. Neither was silence. Emily looked away, blinking several times. I watched as she traced the edge of the table with her fingertips, the old wood catching her skin. I didn't know you felt this alone, she whispered. I didn't know you wanted to know. There it was, the truth sitting between us, fragile and warm like the steam rising from the coffee mug on the table. She lowered herself into a chair. I took the seat opposite her, the seat I had avoided for years, the one where Linda used to sit. Dad, she said, softer now, we thought you needed help. And I did, I admitted. But not the kind you assumed. Her eyes lifted. What kind then? The kind that doesn't come with forms or brochures or a sales pitch about private nursing. I leaned forward. The kind where someone says, "How are you?" and actually wants to hear the answer. Her expression cracked, Just a hairline fracture, but enough. We messed up, she whispered. Yes, I said. You did. But not beyond repair. Something loosened in her shoulders. She reached out, hesitated for a heartbeat, then placed her hand on mine. Warm. Familiar. I want to do better, she said. Then show me. A tear slid down her cheek, quick, embarrassed, brushed away with the back of her hand. The door knocked again. 3 soft taps. Daniel. Come in, I called. He entered, pausing when he saw Emily. Hi, he said awkwardly. She blinked. You must be Daniel. My brother told me you're spending a lot of time here. Daniel flushed slightly. If that's a problem. It isn't, she said before he could finish. I think my father could use all the company he can get, especially the kind that remembers who he is. Daniel glanced at me, unsure if he was allowed to smile. I gave him a small nod. Yes. Smile. We all sat together, the table for 6 finally holding 3, not ghosts but living, breathing people. After a moment, Emily looked at me and said, Dad, what do you want? Truly. The question caught me like a sudden gust of wind, not harsh, just unexpected. I let the silence stretch, let the answer rise slowly. I want to be seen, I said. Not managed. Not stored away. Just seen. As a man who still has a mind, a history, a voice. Emily nodded, tears gathering again. You do, she whispered. I see you. And in that moment, in that quiet, trembling declaration, something settled inside me. Not youthful pride. Not victory. Just peace. My revenge, if you could call it that, happened not through anger but through clarity. They had forgotten who I was. So I reminded them, not loudly, not dramatically, but with dignity. The most powerful rebellion a man can make in old age is refusing to disappear. That evening, after Emily left and Daniel returned home, I sat by the window with the table glowing in the last trace of daylight. Cars passed. Leaves rustled. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed. I rested my hand on the oak surface. Not the table for 6 anymore. But not a table for one either. A table for whoever chose to knock. And as I sat there, the final lesson settled into me like a soft, warm truth. You don't become invisible because you age. You become invisible when you start believing you should be. I no longer believed it. Not anymore.
Subscribe and like. And tell your friends about this video.